done an NCT course, so it's where expectant parents can go for their, learn about having a baby, basically, the process of it. And it was all virtual because of COVID. But she said the one thing that you can do is when you're breathing through labour is breathe to some music, but make sure it's nice and slow. And I was like, okay, well, look, why don't I make an album of like stuff that you can breathe to? And that's where it all came from. And from then on in, it was then, some of it is pretty dark, minor keys, sad stuff, and other of it is like really happy and joyful, because you go through all of that when it's all new and scary and exciting all at the same time. So basically, I set myself a deadline for the September to produce a whole album.
Hi everyone, this is Rick, your host for musicsuccess.com. And today we have another guest. He is a producer and DJ from London, UK. He began producing music a decade ago, but only released his first album in 2020 to celebrate the birth of his first child. Mr. Elderbury, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. Yeah, very well. Thank you. Yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. How's the weather in London?
Yeah, it's cold, as per. Cold, rainy, wet.
Yes, it's cold over here too. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you start in music, and what made you decide to be in music?
So, my earliest music memories are in the car with my dad. We would always drive to go and see my grandmother every Friday night, and we'd always have a CD on in the car. And they were kind of some of my earliest memories. And I started as a lot of kids in the UK did. You play recorder in primary school. Three Blind Mice, Hot Cross Buns. It's the same tune. And I really wanted to play the saxophone. That was always the instrument that did it for me. I think as a kid, I'd seen Lisa Simpson, of course, but also the Blues Brothers, and my dad was a big rock fan and a big blues fan. So there was a lot of sax, and I always wanted to play it, and I did, and I got to a relatively good level. But then as you hit kind of teenage years, 12, 13, sax isn't the instrument. You want to be in a rock band. You want to play guitar. You want to sing. And for me, it was drums. I had a natural affinity to just being able to keep rhythm, and my parents couldn't afford to get me a drum kit. So literally, I would just sit there and just like beat something out on my thighs as I'm sat down, and my thighs would be red raw. But from there, it was then about having a small kit that you'd get from a department store that you would you plug in the power and you'd listen through your headphones, and it was crap, but you'd get the feeling of being a drummer. And then when I was about 16, I joined a band with some friends, and the guy who was playing drums just couldn't play, and I was playing bass because it was like the last thing left. And I said, look, let me play and you play. I'll teach you Seven Nation Army. It's fine. It's not hard. And we started it, and I was like, okay, this is great. This is what I want to do. I want to be in bands. I want to be performing. And went off to uni, and you then get thrown in with a load of other people who you don't know what instruments they play. And it just happened to be that my roommate was a guitarist and singer, and the flat next door to us, one of the guys was a bass player. So I was like, okay, well, let's just do some practice sessions. And I then went to France in my second year of uni, and this is where it all kind of kicked off, really, because we were living in Lille in northwest France, and my housemate Harry, who I've done lots of bits with since, and I was his best man. He's been my best man, so we're super close. He was a very accomplished guitarist, and we met up with some other guys who turned out to be, they were Canadian, and they had produced music for a while, and they were getting quite established. So for example, one guy called Paul did a remix of an Alice in Wonderland track that I think in our second or third year of uni was at like 2 million plays on SoundCloud. You know, so this guy was like amazing. He got signed to Steve Aoki's label, Dimat, to do something. So his production quality was amazing. There was another guy called Sean who did really experimental stuff, and I was sat there on my kind of crappy Windows laptop going, well, what can I do? And I used Audio Tool, and that was a bit crap as like an online DAW, and you know, but I did what I could, you know, and I really tried to learn it by feel, and you know, it wasn't quite there, but I was doing something, and that was when I really started, because I was inspired by these few people who I was around and who had done it. I was like, yeah, okay, I can do this, and that's where it all came from, really.
Great. And what were your major influences as you growing up?
I mean, my favorite my favorite band is the Hives. They're a Swedish kind of rock slash kind of pop punk band who I just love. I don't think they're the world's most technically gifted musicians. I think they're but they just work. You know, they're absolutely fantastic. I've seen them live a few times, and they're my favorite. But I think if anyone were to ask me who I think the greatest band of all time is, it's Led Zeppelin. And I don't think, in my mind, because John Bonham is the best drummer who's ever walked this earth, and Robert Plant's got one of the best voices that has ever graced the earth, and Jimmy Page is also one of the best guitarists. So it's like, of all the integral parts, you know, they're just there, and they made some absolute phenomenal music. So they were right up there for me. As I said, you know, when I was a kid, so my sisters are 8 or 9 years older than me, so their musical taste was, you know, that bit more advanced. So they were into like UK garage. So I remember Oxide and Neutrino and Bomb Funk MCs. There was a track called Freestyler, and they were pretty integral to my kind of upbringing. And I had, I think the first single that I had that was mine was D12 Purple Hills. You know, just like a crap rap, you know, rap song from the States, but it was the kind of sort of music that I was really exposed to was so varied, because they were into pop and the popular music of what a teenager would like in the mid-90s. And my dad was showing me the music from his childhood. So, you know, AC/DC, White Snake, ZZ Top, Led Zeppelin, you know, the Black Sabbath, Metallica, and for him it was always Guns N' Roses and Pink Floyd and AC/DC. So growing up, those were the guys. But then as I started to get more into, so I was really into cycling, and still am. And when I would have been about 16, 17, YouTube was really, you know, gaining momentum, and lots of kind of companies and cyclists were putting their own videos, you know, freestyle riders and things like that. And the amount of music that I discovered through watching those. So there's some influences there, like there is a American producer called Daedalus who performs live on a thing called a mono, which are all these. It's all controlled by Ableton, but they're just a big box of LEDs, and they just run across. It's essentially just a loop, you know. And he all these buttons control different parts of the songs, but it's very visual and tactile with the way he performs, because he's really throwing his arms about. And one of his tracks was in a video for a bicycle company called Charge Bikes. And I happened to own one of their bikes. I watched the video, I listened to the song and go, that's incredible. I listen to him, I buy the album, I see him live and go, oh my God, you know, it's just blown me wide open. And he's done things like Produce Against the Clock, where, you know, you make a beat in 10 minutes, and his process is so different. Like, loads of people start with drums, start with bass line. He just goes on and go, I'm just going to play this, you know, 50s organ that I picked up from a thrift shop, and that's going to be the bass or something, and that's fine because that's how I do it. So he's massive for me, and but again, Sean and Paul and Harry, the people that I was around who've just kind of helped me be a better producer. I think there's some really interesting guys that I'm working with at the minute. So Ms. B is a vocalist who's doing lots of vocals on house and tech house stuff. She wants to do some stuff, so some of her stuff has been absolutely fantastic. And she sent me some demos. They're incredible. A guy called Reese Hodges has just done some absolutely killer remixes, and all these people that I'm coming across in a day to day who just have like something else. And what I'll do is, okay, how did you get that sound? And that information feeds back, and it feeds back, and all of a sudden, you collect this big pot of ideas that you can then take forward. And so, I mean, the amount of times that I come away from my computer and go, "That's the best thing I've ever made." It's almost like every single time I sit down, I go, "That's the best thing I've ever made," and then the next night, "That's the best thing."
Now, can you explain to us a little bit your creative process? Like, what kind of tools do you use, and how do you go about creating your tracks?
So I never used to do this, but recently I've been doing a lot on Splice and finding melodies on Splice in minor keys that I like the sound of. And it really, so one technique I've started doing at the minute is going through drum and bass packs, because you can often, half time them, slow them right down, make them sound really big, because they've got quite the way that drum and bass tends to be produced is there's a lot of reverb and a lot of echo, so it fills that space in the melody, and then you get the drums will kind of pierce through that. So by slowing down drum and bass melodies, you can then get a really atmospheric kind of sound that you can start to work with as a bass. So what I'll do is I'll go through some packs, and I'll go, I like that melody, and I'll lay that down. And I use Logic. I don't really mess about with too many plugins. I've used like some of the RXs before, and Isotope. But in all honesty, I'll go, here's my sample, here's what I want to work with. I'll do lots of chopping of it, maybe some reversing. The effects that I'll run through are pretty much standard on Logic. I don't work with anything special. There's a couple of reverb plugins that I've got, but nothing that people couldn't get a crack of. So it's all pretty basic stuff. But it's just finding something that I go, okay, I really like that, and then the next thing I'll do is I'll play out a drum beat, and I'll either look at programming my own drums, because it's what I've been doing. I still refer to myself as a drummer, so I'll either play it out, or I will go, okay, I've got a batch of drums that I really like. I'll use this, and this, and I'll work out from there. But to be honest, it depends what kind of mood I'm in. If what I want to do is just get down as much as I possibly, let's say, for example, I've got an hour this evening, I will literally just throw samples upon samples upon samples into one project and mute loads until I get something that I think is right. If I've got a bit more time, let's say, half a day, I can be a bit more, but I think I can be more structured and more careful. But sometimes the thing that I have in my head is the thrill of it is doing it. It's not having the thing at the end. It's the doing and the process, and actually going. I don't want to necessarily. I'm not producing it because I think someone else is going to like it. I hope other people like it, obviously, but I do it because I like it, and I think this is cool, and I think it's a great process, and it's what I like doing my time. If it became a chore, then I think that would be the time where I'd stop.
Oh, that's totally real to me. What made you do the album? Getting to an album.
Yeah, so my so my wife and I got married in December 2019, and we found out we were having our first child in the January-February time. And you then have a few months where you're you're going through all the emotions, the kind of dread, the fear, and then the elation and the excitement. So one night I had just started. I think someone at work had said to me, we were listening to stuff in the office, and he played me just some lo-fi stuff. I was like, I bet I could make that. It doesn't sound that hard. So I started to mess around with it, and my wife came in. She must have been 4 or 5 months pregnant at that point, and said, "I really like this. It's really chilled out. It's helping me relax. Have you got any more?" I was like, started to make a few more tracks, and she said, "This." Uh, uh, Sorry, and then a week or two later, we had done an NCT course, so it's where expectant parents can go learn about having a baby, basically, the process of it. And it was all virtual because of COVID. But she said the one thing that you can do is when you're breathing through labor is breathe to some music, but make sure it's nice and slow. And I was like, okay, well, look, why don't I make an album of like stuff that you can breathe to? And that's where it all came from. And from then on in, it was then, some of it is pretty dark, minor keys, sad stuff, and other of it is like really happy and joyful, because you go through all of that when it's all new and scary and exciting all at the same time. So basically, I set myself a deadline for the September to produce a whole album. And with the exception, I think, of 2 tracks, I did it all within about a 4-month period, from literally nothing to producing, 15 tracks. And actually, on Bandcamp, there's a load of tracks I never actually released. So I was just playing around, because there's some I think I did like a bootleg of Lean On by Major Lazer and DJ Snake, like a lo-fi bootleg of it, because I just needed more music to fit it out. And then when she was in labour, I did an 8-hour mixtape of all the lo-fi music I could find in the world, and I'd literally sat there over like 4 nights just DJing, lo-fi to get as much as possible. And luckily, he only took about 2 or 3 hours, so I didn't need all of it. But,
wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Is that like a common practice? I mean, to that, like they actually put music so when the delivery is taking place, they no.
No.
Okay.
No, but they just said that if you're struggling to, because it's 1, 2, it's proper slow. So it's normally when you're just like breathing in and out, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's like slowed down even more. So what I was trying to kind of do was almost put such a kind of prominent kick in there that you couldn't jump ahead. That was the thing driving it. So when it's like 75, 80 BPM, it was like, okay, that's all it is now. And it, it worked. We did some exercises, and it seemed to work. And on the whole, it all went okay. So.
Oh, it has to be a specific BPM, because if you're talking about prog metal, advisable, right?
Yeah, that won't work. Yeah.
Unless you are in a hurry. This is a bad joke, but I guess it's definitely not the kind of music to deliver a baby. Now, what are you working on now? Are you working on new projects? Collaborating with anybody? What are you doing?
Yeah. So, well, after my first album, it then became a, a thing where I was like, okay, well, I might as well release an album every year, to kind of, around Will's birthday. So every September I aim for a new album. So I released an album last September called One. This September it'll be called Two. But last year the album was massive. It was 24 tracks, and it was essentially like a best of in the year. This year has been a bit different, because lots of people are out performing again. There's lots of excitement. Lots of new producers have learnt skills over COVID, so lots of people popping up. So I've been doing more collaborations. The last one was with a rapper called Platt. We did a track together called London Eye, which you can listen to now. The next one that I think will be due out will be a collaboration with Chilled Llama. He's a Italian Austrian producer who has made like two singles, which are kind of quite cool lo-fi singles, and it is we've been collaborating kind of back and forth over Google Drive. I've never spoken to him. He just popped up on Instagram, and I thought this stuff is really cool. You know, let's do something. So we've produced kind of quite a industrial lo-fi track, which I don't know when it will be out, but I can't imagine it will be too long. I think our next process is to master it, so that should be pretty soon. And then I'm working with Ms. B, who has done a couple of demos across some instrumentals that I've done, and she's come from the house background, so she's now looking at slowing things down, and she's used some lo-fi beats I've made, but also one track that I thought was a lo-fi beat, she's made it sound really R&B, and I was like, okay, well that's a completely different direction than I thought it was going in, but it sounds phenomenal. So I think we're going to be doing some more stuff together in the future, and then there'll be another album in September. You know, I always kind of keep a couple of tracks back just that I make, and yeah, I'm hoping that a lot can change in 9 months, but I'm hoping that there'll be a new album from me, and I would like there to be an album with me and Ms. B, and you know, if I can do more collaborations, you know, I'd love to do kind of like a compilation of everything that I've done with lots of different producers, and I'd love to do more with some rappers as well. There's a guy in West London called Crit, who I've DJ'd before. I would love to do some stuff with him. He kind of ebbs and flows through grime and then some more. What's the best way to put it? Maybe more kind of R&B feeling stuff, which I would love to get involved with, and yeah. So there's loads of people out there, but yeah, definitely for sure there'll be an album out in September, but in the meantime it will just be collaborations, I reckon.
Okay, awesome. And sounds you're going to be pretty busy now. In terms of business, one of the reasons why I get guests on the show is to actually they explain what is their business model, how do they try to put their music out, do the marketing, or try to monetize through their music. Can you explain to us a little bit, like, do you have a distributor? Do you have a booking agent? How do you go about getting either gigs or finding people to collaborate? Can you explain us a little bit about your process?
Yeah, so I do most of my marketing is through Instagram. It's the platform I've had most success and most affinity to, but that's me. Before this, I've DJ'd for nearly 10 years. So DJing naturally brings you close to producers and singers, and you start to just meet people, and more often than not, DJs who only DJ will eventually produce, and producers who don't DJ eventually DJ. So you'll cross paths. But because of DJing, I've been doing a lot of internet radio, pirate radio for the last kind of 6-7 years, and yeah, you meet people, and I've always found that's a good way of developing an audience. In terms of what I've done away from radio and kind of promoting myself as an artist, I've never done a particularly good job, because my promotion has fallen in line with me being a parent. So my time has obviously been massively split. But if I was going to start again, and let's say I'm kind of 23 years old and I've got all the time in the world and no money but loads of time, I would be banging on the doors of pubs and clubs and doing gigs. And with Spotify these days, you can just ping people a QR code and they can hear your stuff. It depends where you're coming from, because when I was DJing more, the gigs I wanted to do were the gigs I wanted to put on, not I wanted to go and play chart music. That was never what I wanted to do. I was into like trap music and really heavy, EDM and bass house. So that was what I wanted to play. And then, but that's not what the pubs and bars and clubs want to necessarily hear. So you've got to decide where you want to be, and if you want to be in that niche, you've then got to find promoters and nights where you can go and do that. But you've got to be prepared to kind of earn your stripes. If you want to be just DJ, just a commercial DJ, then go to bars, go to clubs, buy a super cheap setup, and just practice. Just keep practicing and practicing and practicing, and the more you practice, the better you'll get, the more you'll be booked. But I think more than anything is you don't have to be the world's best DJ. I think there's two things that you need to do to be successful as a working DJ. You've got to be reliable. That's not just you as a person, but also your timekeeping. Your equipment has to be in good condition. You can't rock up and go, "Oh, my mixer's broken, so I can't play." You've got to be reliable week in, week out. And then, second of all, you've got to be able to read the crowd. Any old person, I could teach anyone to mix two tracks together. I'm pretty confident I could do that. What is harder to teach is you look out to a room of people, particularly if you're in a bar or like people where they haven't come to see a DJ, and you've got to be able to know the track they want to hear before they know it. And that's a real skill, and that takes years to learn. So if you want to be a DJ, you've got to master those two things. But you can always start by being reliable. There's no one is stopping you from being reliable. If you turn up, you're prompt and you're well prepared and all your gear's in good working order, you will always have the ability to get gigs, and then the rest will come. Sometimes it's just a case of looking at the DJ and learning, because I went to a bar once in Kilburn, and the DJ was just losing everything. Like he just wasn't playing what people wanted to hear. And then about kind of 15 minutes in, I was like, this is not going well. You can just see people drifting from the dance floor. And I was like, He just started scratching. His transit, he sacked off anything about the music and it was just, I'm just going to scratch. And people loved it because it was the sort of place where they were like, we love listening to scratch DJs. So he scratched, he got everyone back up because they weren't actually that bothered about the music. They just wanted to hear the technique. So sometimes it's not just about which track, it's how to bring the crowd back on your side. So there's loads of different things, but as a DJ, it's never been easier, but it's also never been harder. The venues are closing down. COVID has been really hard on these places, but SoundCloud, Mixcloud, YouTube, you've got so many opportunities to just put content out there. So you can be spotted like that. For producers, I think COVID has been a massive opportunity because people have had a chance to sit down and just listen to music. We're not commuting and doing work on the run. We when you're only out for one bit of exercise a day, like you were during the peak of lockdown, people plugged in their headphones and that was their time. So you really had you had an opportunity to build an audience, and they've come with you a bit. I would strongly recommend that anyone who is producing, don't hesitate, just start. Reach out to, you're less than 2 degrees of separation from someone in music, whether that's a hobby or an interest, band, or you can always get gear. You can rent gear now. Gear, you can buy gear on interest-free finance. It's so accessible. But just do something. And I think the best thing that I ever did was just do something. Even when I was producing rubbish on Audio Tool and I knew it was rubbish, it was doing something. There are hundreds of hours of stuff I would never hope sees the light of day because it was so bad. But all of that was a foundation before you get to a stage where you can start reaching out. And I would play stuff to people and go, I know this doesn't sound right, but I can't quite put my finger on what it is. And they give you a bit of information and you learn from it. And the next time you get better and better. And it's just building that process. But with anything, if you're I don't care how old you are or what your previous experience. If you want to do something, particularly in music, just do it. The worst thing you can do is procrastinate. Just have a go. And I think deep down, if we ask people and say, would you rather that someone had a go at music and asked for a bit of help, or just never bothered and always regretted it? I think most people go, have a go. People, I'm sure you've had this on Instagram, where people will reach out and just ask for a bit of advice on podcasting or recording or audio or something like that, and you'll go, yeah, I'll give you 10 minutes from my day because I would like to do that for someone. And I occasionally get questions which is, particularly DJ stuff, because I've got a big club set up at home, and I'm like, well, how do you justify having all that gear? Well, when I'm not using it, I rent it out. So every single night that it's sat here, it's not doing me anything. But all these DJs I meet, I said, look, if you ever need a set of decks or a mixer or some big speakers, give me a shout. It's £100 a night, and they'll be like, yeah, okay, and eventually, you can. That's how you can start to make your music. Even if you're not playing, stuff can still make you make you money. I'm not saying give up your day job or or anything, but it's a nice little side hustle just to keep the fire burning.
Okay, awesome. And now that actually brings me to two questions that I gotta ask you, because as I recall, when I was growing up, the DJ thing was not. We're talking about the age of vinyl, and there was no CDs or whatever. They didn't seem to like a DJ was like, oh my God, he's the DJ. Nowadays, it seems that everybody, which is a good thing, a good and a bad thing, I guess. I don't know. Anybody can get a hold of equipment and DJ. So I'm guessing the DJ aspect is a little bit what happens to the rest of the music industry. There's a lot of music out. There's a lot of things out. Not necessarily the best quality, but it's a good thing because more people can get into music and create, right? So I guess my question is this: is there a lot of DJs? Is there such thing as too much DJs, and that creates problems? And the other question is, how do you determine who's the best DJ in the world? Because to me, that seems like a little bit subjective, right? I mean, I know some
Yeah.
the ones you hear, right, on TV and so forth in the media. But isn't that a question of taste? Like musicians?
Yeah. 100%. 100%. I mean, Hardwell, I think, won top, DJ Mag's, number one ranked DJ for like 3 or 4 years running. I would never go and see Hardwell personally. He's just not my style of music. I don't think he's technically that good a DJ either. But the people who go and see it, he never lets down. So if that's your, that big room Dutch house, he's your guy. Go and see him. If you want to go and see an amazing drum and bass show, then I would recommend Culture Shock. I would, I went to go and see Benny Page and Sweetie Irie, who are, kind of London drum and bass duo who blew me away, and that. But again, they're never going to be headlining Glastonbury or Reading or anything like that. So it's entirely subjective. I think in terms of there being too many DJs, well, I think we need to start recognizing who is a DJ and who is a producer, because I think the best way that I've ever heard that this described is if you're in a restaurant, the producer is the person who has made every single element that then the past chef, the guy who actually gives it to the front of house, has arranged it in such a way. So the past chef, people like Gordon Ramsay, Marco Pierre White, the big chefs are the ones who control the pass. They've set the standard and then they control the pass. So they will make sure that everything's cooked properly and presented well. And then that goes to the customer. That's what you see. What you haven't seen is the guy cooking the steak, the guy peeling the potatoes, everything that has gone into that process has not necessarily been seen. So the best DJs out there, I mean, personally, if it was in terms of performers, as I said earlier, Daedalus is an incredible electronic music performer, and I would really encourage people who haven't seen that type of electronic show to see it. I think personally, my guilty pleasure is always going to be Diplo and Skrillex, and when they did Jack You, that was just incredible. That blew me away. But these guys aren't the world's best DJs. Jazzy Jeff is light years ahead of them in terms of DJ, talent. So I agree with you. It's entirely subjective. But if we're going to say how many DJs are there, well, I say not that many, because the guys who you see on the bill, 98% of them will be producers who happen to then DJ afterwards. The one of the most memorable shows was, I saw an American producer called OK, who sung over the last couple of his tracks, because he'd produce them and he does the vocals and he sings over them. So it was a really refreshing way of seeing a DJ show being performed, because he was actually up playing, singing them properly, and that was great. Afterwards, I think it was Party Favor going back to Valentino Khan, which again for me was just like amazing, kind of like big bass house style stuff. But the DJ show was nowhere near as memorable as OK jumping up and singing and getting the crowd involved. So. And that's because he knows the music, because he made it all. So yeah, I mean, there's a few. I think you're entirely right. I think it's entirely subjective, and my best DJ is not going to be someone else's best DJ, and in the same way that subjectively the Hives are my favorite band. If anyone were to ask me, the most talented band ever to walk the earth is Led Zeppelin, but for me, it's the Hives, and that's just it. And other people go for the Sex Pistols and AC/DC, and some people like Beyonce and Adele, and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So long as people then recognize. Yeah, prime example: when people go and watch a Deadmau5 show, you listen to Deadmau5 music. That's all there is. He doesn't play anything else. If you go and see a Skrillex show, almost everything will be from his record label. So you get that collection of music, and the same with kind of Steve Aoki as well. But when you go and see a guy who is influenced by all these people and playing at a horrible nightclub down the road, but is really putting his heart and soul into it, that could technically be the best DJ, the most technically gifted DJ out there. He just hasn't got the record label and the fame and the producer quality behind him.
Yeah.
Or her.
And now, on a different note, in the music industry, what has been the best advice you have received so far? What would you say is that?
Keep going. So I sent a track. So for people who don't know music and aren't aware, what you can do on Spotify is pitch your music to what are called playlist curators. So the people who will put together a playlist that you may be interested in. So for example, in lo-fi, you might have lo-fi beats to chill / relax / study to, that type of thing. And what you do is you can contact that curator, either pay them some money or pay a service to contact them on your behalf. And they'll either give you some feedback or accept it and put them up, and you reach a new audience. I messaged, it was actually not that long ago, I messaged a lo-fi producer on Instagram called K Beats, and he had like 1,200 followers on Instagram, but his end of year wrap up was like 50,000 plays, like 40 or 50,000 plays on Spotify. Now I've got like 9,000 Instagram followers, and I was on like hundreds. I was like, what? Like, how is, like, obviously, like, he's got a secret I haven't got. And I was like, okay, well, I then followed him and looked at what he was doing. And every single story, it was, my music's just been accepted on this playlist, on this playlist, on this playlist. And I was like, okay, so he's going down this route. So let me try it. And I've tried it, and it's now starting to, there's some returns coming from it. And I messaged him and said, how are you getting on all these playlists day after day after day? Because it really seemed quite relentless. And he said, well, first and foremost, he's doing a lot of it. He's physically putting himself out there a lot, and he's got lots of different tracks he can do it with. So, okay, no problem there. Also, he said, I'm making really high quality music. And I was like, okay, like, I thought when I first read it, I was like, oh, is that a bit of a slight? Like, is he thinking I'm not making high quality music? And all he actually meant by it was, I have really pushed myself to make myself as attractive as possible to people who've never heard of me before. And I get a lot of respect from people who know why I'm making music, because they go, that's such a nice story that you did it for your son and your wife, and and you're now following that up. But actually, for people who don't know that, it's just another track on a playlist. So what I've now realized is that every single thing I'm now putting out, the story isn't, they don't have that connection to the original story of my first album. Is the first bit of music they hear from me is the first impression they're ever going to get from me as an artist. So it's got to be super high quality, lovely to listen to. It's got to make them feel something, and I want everyone who listens to a bit of music does feel something. Some of them gets them pumped up, some people makes them cry. And my stuff, I just want them to feel something. And there will always be music in people's collection that people can only listen to when they're sad. Mine is Little Black Submarines by the Black Keys. Not because it's a necessarily super sad song, but I had a friend who passed away, and I found out the night after I went to go and see the Black Keys, and that's the memory, and that's with me and me alone, and that's fine. And there'll be people who can't listen to Steps or can't listen to ABBA, and it's just because we've all got that story behind it. And for me, all I want people to do is have that initial feeling where they go, okay, this song makes me feel like, and they fill in the gap. So in terms of that bit of advice and kind of keep going, I think that was really important, because what I'd forgotten was, you're no longer making music for your wife during labor. That was the story. But, that's the backstory. It's now, how do I keep going? How do I keep moving forward? What's next? And I think that's the thing that's driving me forward. And as I said earlier, every single bit of music, every time I come away from the computer and I take my headphones off, I'm going, that's the best thing I've ever made. Because it really does feel like I'm talking to more people. I've been more open with people. I'm reaching out to more people on Instagram. I'm being braver. I can't tell if that's just an age thing or just confidence in life, or now I've got stuff out there. I've got a thicker skin. But just being that bit braver and just saying, look, have a listen to that. Let me know what you think. Happy to receive any criticism, and if we can work together, let's do something, and building each other up. And I think that idea of just keeping going, but also, and this is my own thing, and I really regret this in myself. And I'll be telling my little boy this, which is, if you want to do something, just get started. Don't wait. You're in an age of, that in front of you has more information than we could ever learn at school. So use it. Jump on YouTube, learn a tutorial. The first time I learned Smoke on the Water on the guitar was life-changing for me. I can remember the feeling. So just do it. Literally just get started and then keep going.
And so we're talking about basically persistence and also networking, which is very important in order to get your music out there. I like that idea that you're telling me about the person you mentioned, where he connects the story to the song. That's a pretty good marketing idea, because there's actually an emotional connection to what's being presented to the for the people who actually run the playlist on Spotify. So that's pretty good. Now, how do you see today? This is a question that I ask a lot of people. Like, how do you see today the music industry compared to when you started? What's your opinion?
I mean, I remember going to university with a CD collection, and you wouldn't dream of that now. I don't think this laptop even has a CD ROM in it. So that's changed massively. Physical music has gone. It's gone from the mainstream, but it's come up in the artistic world, and DJs still love vinyl. And I've got a couple of vinyl decks I occasionally put out. But I still connect the vinyl decks to record box, and I do everything through the computer. So it's that's changed massively. I think access is the main thing. I have a song called "It's All Gonna Be Okay" off my first album that has had 100,000 streams on TikTok in Saudi Arabia. I don't know why. It's just like I'm not marketed to the Saudis, but it's just how it is, and I've never had access to. I'm on TikTok as I've done like three. I'm no good at it, to be honest. So that's mad. That's a story I never thought would happen. Um, I think moving forward, I work in public relations in finance, and the company I work for is in crypto. Got a massive interest in crypto, and everyone in the last year has been talking about NFTs. Non fungible tokens, and this idea of having the copy.
Sorry to interrupt you. They are interested in NFTs, or they are not? I didn't totally.
They are interested, and this is originally it started off with a couple of geeks buying NFTs and artwork and monkeys and stuff like off each other, and music is getting massive. I've seen people on Instagram selling their NFTs for an Ethereum. So what's an Ethereum? $2,500, $3,000, for one track. I don't know any bedroom producer who could have even thought of making that amount of money off their music before. And these guys are seeing it as an investment. They think if this person blows up, I've got one of their tracks. I own it, and I don't think that was possible. Well, even 2 years ago, it's such a massive leap forward, and there will be a situation where a major record label will own a back catalogue, and some geek who found them at 16 years old will go, "No, I own this song. I want X amount million," and there'll be a massive lawsuit for it, and it will fundamentally change the rights around music. And I'm not going to predict, because I don't know how it's going to go, and I'm not an expert in this, but I think there's going to be a massive, massive shift in this, and I really am not sure, because this is the thing. I can't name you a top 40 track. I haven't been able to for probably 15 years. But the amount of music that people are listening to, I mean, the amount of music has just increased in terms of volume. Again, you've got so much music on your phone now, and people aren't listening to just Ariana Grande or just Beyonce. They're listening to Beyonce, and then someone on the playlist who thinks they found the next Beyonce, and there's so much more content that I think what's going to happen is these top level recording guys are still going to own the top talent, because they need to fly them on massive international stadium tours, and that can't be done through the crypto world. But you're going to get, and I can't quite tell where this is going to go up to, but you're going to get, I think the ceiling for independent artists is going to get higher and higher and higher and higher. And there may even be a time when a massive recording artist does it all off their own back. You know, um, I don't think it would have been beyond the realms of fantasy to think someone like Ed Sheeran might have been able to do a stadium tour off his own back. But I so long as they don't come through like the X Factor and Pop Idol route, and they do it through kind of organic marketing, Instagram, TikTok is going to completely blow these people up. And I think if someone stays independent for long enough, you are going to find that there's going to be more and more artists who are in the upper echelons of pop who are going to own all their own music, and that's going to fundamentally change things. But I'm pretty positive. I think music is in a really good state if you're an electronic consumer of it. I think if you're someone who just lives on music for live gigs, I think is a pretty bad time. It appears to be getting better, but I think there's going to be lasting implications for a few years. And I do think the best thing that people can do is go on Mixcloud, go on SoundCloud, go on social media and YouTube and find some artists. Make it a New Year's resolution to find one new artist every week and drop them a like, drop them a comment. And that will sometimes I'm sure everyone has a story like this, but the comedian Michael McIntyre, massive comedian in the UK, he was doing his penultimate show at one of the comedy clubs in London when him and his wife had said, "Look, if I haven't made it by this date, I'm quitting comedy. I can't afford to do this anymore. Been doing it for a few years." And that one before last, he gets picked up, he goes on TV, he does a stadium tour within 6 months, and he just blew up for him. And sometimes you don't know how close someone is to giving up, and it might just need the extra like, or like, if I get 50 likes on this, I'll do something else. If I get one comment, I'll do something else. But for not a lot of effort, people can give people a lot of confidence. So I really would recommend if someone is going to listen to music through their phone or through their computer, just give them a like, give them a comment, fire emoji, whatever, just be positive. And I think the industry will get better and more democratic. I think we are going to see the stranglehold of the big labels loosen in the next few years. I hope anyway. I'm sure people 50 years ago said that as well. But
well, I totally agree with you, and I think we're seeing more and more people getting creative ways to have their freedom and the control over the music. You can see the example of Taylor Swift, where she just
yeah,
all of her albums. Prince changed his name to do whatever he wanted. I mean,
yeah.
there are different ways where you can go about, and I think it's an exciting era where people will start to make to actually get paid for what they do. Right now, on another note, here's a question for you. So let's say you've been taken to a different planet, and you can only take 3 things with you. What would that be?
Ah, shit. I assume I can breathe, and is there electricity? And
I mean, you have all the basic stuff, right?
okay.
Let's say
All right. Well,
we're moving out of Earth, and you got to take 3,
okay.
and you have like food
Okay.
and oxygen, right?
So I'm taking my iMac, which is what I make music on. I'm taking a bike. I would probably take my gravel bike and um see, now I can't decide whether I take my DJ gear or a rugby ball. I'll go DJ gear.
Okay. Okay. That's a good choice. Okay, so that's a pretty good choice. Now, what is for you music success?
um, I think that is the key question that is the ultimate subjective, because for me the success was getting an album out. That first album for me was just mega. It was such an emotional time anyway. It really was. That was success for me, to get that album out and to have it in the public domain that people could listen to, and there was a story behind it. That was success. But for other people, they're not going to rest until they get 2 million streams, or play a certain venue, and that's admirable. Fair play to those people. I would love to be in a position where I am not losing money by doing anything musical. So, um, to be honest, I would happily play in a covers rock band for 20 years and just cover my costs, and that would be fine. That wouldn't be a problem. I have no desire to take over the world. I mean, really, I think the one thing that would make me incredibly proud, and probably prouder than anything, is if my little boy went to school one day and said, "Yeah, my dad makes music." I think that would be cool. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's entirely subjective, and I don't hold if the amount of people that I've seen um, not post their Spotify Wrapped figures at the end of 2021, because it says how many streams you've got, how many countries. The people who post it have got really good numbers for them, but even people who are like getting like 10, 20,000 streams were saying, "Oh, I only started in June," or not a great year. And I'm like, but just be really thankful that 12,000 people wanted to listen to your stuff. That's amazing. Some academics who have poured 40 years of their life into like one particular part of neuroscience who are going to save thousands of lives are never going to never going to have an audience of 12,000. Be humbled by people taking the time out to listen to something you've created. But for me, I think it would just be, my little boy just saying, I mean, actually, the coolest thing would be if he turned around and said, "I'm not embarrassed by it." That I think that would be the real clincher. I would like to. I mean, my goals for this year are 10,000 streams on Spotify, and one album and two collaborations. That's what I want to what I want to make. But in terms of overall success, I'm just taking it, day by day, and essentially year by year. Like, what I've done is I've put a strategy in, which is in my own head, of course. If I want to get 10,000 streams, I need to get X hundred a month. So how have I done that? Well, I've reached out to all these different playlists that have lots of listeners, and I'm trying to get them posted. And I reckon I can hit X hundred by this, and this. So that's my idea of success. And then the other stuff, which is creating music, is completely driven by me. Sometimes I wake up and I'm really inspired. Other days I never want to listen to a single note. And I think so long as people are, look, if someone turned around to me and said, "I want to be the world's biggest EDM producer," I'd be like, "Yeah, great. How? First of all, how? And then why not? So long as you've got an idea of how, yeah, go for it."
Awesome. Mr. Elderbury, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Appreciate your time. What's the best way people can connect with you? Where can they go?
So Instagram, Elderbury_music. You can just search Elderbury on Google, and you'll find me. You can try me on SoundCloud and Mixcloud. All my music is up on there as well. It's on Bandcamp, on YouTube, and occasionally TikTok if I can be bothered.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much once again for being on the show. And I want to remind our guests that all these links to all the resources and everything else we've been chatting today about in this episode can be found in musicsuccess.com. You just need to enter the guest's name in the search bar, and this episode, along with all the show notes, will pop right up. Again, thank you so much for being here, for your time, being so gracious, and actually helping people with your experience and knowledge in the music industry. I think you're a good example of somebody who wants to get into DJ, what they can do, and how they can progress through the music industry today. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Okay, so I just want to remember you guys that one of the reasons why I put this platform up and share these stories is because your success is really my success, and I hope you don't forget that you should live your dreams. Until the next episode, stay safe, and I'll see you soon. Take care.